This is NASCAR's Gen 4 car. Most of you watching this video probably already know what this is. It's NASCAR's Cup Series car they ran from 1992 to 2007. They also raced it in the Nationwide Series up until 2010, and both drivers and fans absolutely love it. If you have any idea what the ARCA Menard Series is, you would probably know that this car ran at ARCA as well, but for a much longer time, it was basically full-time up until 2017, which is 10 full years after the car was retired from the Cup Series. In 2017, ARCA debuted the Gen 6 style body, which is the exact same body style that we have today in 2026, and the Chevy and Toyota both haven't changed whatsoever since that 2017 season. ARCA is definitely known for running older looking versions of Cup cars. I mean, these ARCA cars look like they're from 2014 at this point, which they are the Cup Series body styles from back then. Hell, even some lower budget ARCA teams run older Cup Series chassis. They could be as old as the early 2000s. Sterling Marlin's 2001 Daytona 500 car was raced in 2023 in ARCA at Daytona by Frankie Muniz, just to give you an example. But anyways, back to the ARCA Gen 4 cars. They were, of course, officially retired for most teams after 2017. That's when the Gen 6 body styles were introduced, but some teams actually raced them after the Gen 6 car was allowed to be run at every single race, with the Gen 6 cars on the exact same racetrack as you see right here, an ARCA car that's a Gen 4 getting lapped by the Gen 6 cars. Obviously, looks pretty odd, but teams were allowed to do that until the end of 2019 when ARCA officially outlawed it. Unfortunately, this is where the end of a lot of teams was met, due to those teams not being able to afford the new Gen 6 bodies. I mean, you can see how low budget that 10 that's a Gen 4 is racing next to the Gen 6 car. I don't even know what kind of manufacturer that's supposed to be. Maybe a Chevy? That looks very strange. This photo probably looks familiar if you watched this video I made a little bit ago, called ARCA Zombie Cars, where it basically talks about the Gen 4 is racing with Gen 6 cars and some other different things that we're actually going to mention later in this video. Now, when ARCA announced that Gen 4 bodies would no longer be allowed after 2019, they said that in the ARCA West Series, teams would still be able to run them up until 2021, but of course not in main ARCA. After 2019, we thought that was the end of the Gen 4 car for the most part. That was until COVID hit and ARCA found out they would be racing at the Daytona road course in 2020 with a modified schedule. But with that schedule update, ARCA also announced something maybe pretty shocking. They would be allowing the Gen 4 car to be ran just for that one single race at the Daytona road course, and then after that it would be never run again in ARCA Menard Series competition. It was the most random thing ever. Maybe ARCA decided, hey, we're just gonna do this because we feel like it. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't expect anyone to run the car, who knows. But 3 teams actually showed up to the racetrack in Gen 4 cars, and they were some pretty high profile drivers and teams as well doing that. Don't believe me? Watch this.
And her car, Jim, looks a little bit different than most of the cars in the starting lineup.
It's got the monster teeth on it. It's one of the 3 cars that have actually had some road course lineage that are still allowed to race in the series. This is not a composite body car. This is a car that's been racing in the NASCAR canon east and west. Started out in the Turner Scott Motorsports camp. Scott Heckert actually won 3 road course races in this car. Now it's in DGR Crosley's camp. Ooh, there's the 46 of Thad Moffitt going on. He's running 6th or 7th. He also has one of those composite body car, non-composite body cars. Looks a little bit more slope like the old Cup car. And Thad, man, he had a good run going. He was hanging real tough with some road course ringers there a moment ago.
Yeah, Thad Moffitt, he had just gotten passed by Orion McLaughlin to drop him back to 10th, but right now he's a little bit stuck. He needs to spin that car without going in the grass, because if he gets in the grass, that could spell trouble for him. You can get stuck in a hurry. He's able to do that. Thad Moffitt, 5th in the series point standings coming into Daytona.
And they're not allowed to use that inside paved area. That's where the motorcycles race here at Daytona.
Yup, Haley Deegan and Thad Moffitt both ran Gen 4 cars in that Daytona road course race in 2020 for ARCA. Deegan, of course, being on a pretty big team, DGR Crosley, today Tricon Garage. I don't know why they just randomly decided to put her in a Gen 4 car for seemingly no reason. I mean, to be honest, I feel like this would have a bit of a competitive disadvantage, but maybe they just had a Gen 4 car they just had to get rid of, and, you know, why not put it on the track for one more race? And the thing is, they both ran their normal paint schemes that they usually ran on the Gen 6 cars that season in ARCA. So obviously, kind of an odd look to have them both randomly wrapped around a Gen 4 car for that weekend. Had to make the decals a different size, obviously. I mentioned there was actually a third one that ran. It was Max McLaughlin for Hattori Racing. In the one car, this one actually being a Toyota, the only one other than the two Fords. As you can see here, Deegan McLaughlin would have a highly contested race. Deegan ultimately would just edge him out, finishing in 6th. McLaughlin will come home in 7th place, getting 2 top 10s for the Gen 4 cars. Thad Moffitt would finish just outside of the top 10 in P11, so ultimately 3 inside of the top 11 was pretty nice for the Gen 4 cars. Final race in ARCA. This was supposed to be one final farewell to the Gen 4 body style. After this Daytona road course race, we expected to never see it in another NASCAR sanctioned race ever again. Now, was that true? Nope, it somehow wasn't. Remember when I said ARCA West teams were allowed to race the Gen 4 car up until 2021? Well, apparently they decided to extend that just like the main ARCA series did and allowed them to race on road courses in 2022 with that Gen 4 style of body. Now, most teams actually didn't do this. They usually just ran their Gen 6 car even at the road courses. But there was one certain team at one of the Portland races in 2022 in the pouring rains, what you're seeing right now, that decided they were going to run it. This is Takuma Kogo, Japanese driver. He ran the Gen 4 car in that 2022 Portland race, driving for Jerry Pitts Racing in a Camry technically, with basically no front end decals. It of course was the only Gen 4 that was on the racetrack, and it would end up being the final time in ARCA history that a Gen 4 would actually see the racetrack. Final time any sort of NASCAR sanctioned event that a Gen 4 car raced, which is just crazy. Koga actually ran his Gen 4 car the season before that, and it actually had Camry decals that time. He was actually involved in this pretty insane crash, possibly the final crash a Gen 4 has ever been involved in.
That's right where Takuma Koga was in that number 7 car. Wow. Lots of action, lots happening there in turn 1, and look how high off the ground Takuma got there in that number 7 car. Wow, tough break for Jake Drew and Takuma Koga, both of them having very strong runs.
Koga would actually come home to finish in P5 in that Portland race, marking the final ever race with the Gen 4 car in a NASCAR sanctioned race, being a top 5 finish. I know it's sad to know that the Gen 4 car will never hit a track in a NASCAR race ever again, but man, that thing had a hell of a life. It was running either NASCAR or ARCA from 1992 to 2022. That is 30 years. That's a long, long time. And the car isn't technically dead yet. It still lives on in the historic sports car challenge when they do NASCAR races. That, of course, has no sanction with NASCAR or anything. It's just a bunch of different stock cars on the racetrack. They're from every single year you can possibly imagine. But it was cool to see it back in ARCA for those few races I talked about earlier. That'll do it for this video, and I will see you guys next time.